Heyzeus just released a video talking about the broken Fang case and the very prominent future it's probably going to have. Now, looking at the discontinued cases, we commonly talk about these ones being absolutely perfect for investments. The problem is they're just way too expensive. Now, looking at this right here, the broken Fang case is a little bit of an interesting makeup, but the worst part about all of this is Heyzeus was probably 100% correct based off this information right here. We can see that the broken Fang case is dangerously low on cases out there, and it's probably only going to get worse moving forward.
SkinSwap is today's sponsor, and they're also sponsoring you with a free bonus for signing up with the first link in the description. They're the premier place for CSGO and Rust skins with a massive trading site and a top-of-the-line marketplace, offering you the most competitive rates out there and a massive 40% bonus when you're using that link in the description. Combine that with their top-of-the-line selling feature with many payout options and their trading feature legitimately taking you just about a minute, and there's no reason not to sign up with that first link in the description.
Now, looking at all this information, you might think that the broken Fang case is the perfect opportunity to invest in, but the truth is we've known all this information for quite a long time. If we can look at the price trend of the broken Fang case and all of the discontinued cases, we can see very evidently that they're up quite significantly, but they're also really expensive, and that's the biggest turnoff for these cases. And when we can pick up 6 of these cheaper rare cases that have also seen a very similar amount of growth in the past 30 days to the ones that are 6 times more expensive, and although they have seen that growth, they're just way too expensive for that growth to continue on a sustainable pace. Now, in the past video talking about cases, we saw the Prisma 2 see 200% growth just about a month after being removed, but looking at these 5 active duty cases right here, it's very likely that we don't see anywhere close to that in similar growth. That's because of this chart right here. These are the total number of cases out there, and you can see I threw in the Prisma 2 and the Clutch case for a little bit of a comparison. You can see the Clutch case was a massive supply, and we can see that reflected when we look at the 1-year graph and see that the fact is it has not moved at all in the past couple of months just because the supply is so massive. It's the #1 most unboxed rare case out there, and yet we can still see no growth for this case in the past couple of months. Now, if we go to my investing series, this is exactly what we expected to happen, but when we come back and compare it to the rest of the rare cases, especially the cheaper rare cases, this is not a similar trend we see at all. However, it's very likely that the next active duty case that goes into the rare drop pool is going to see a very similar path. That's because we can see the Fracture and the Snakebite both having relatively large supply. Not as large as the Clutch case, but that's also if these cases were moved today. The Snakebite and the Fracture are probably going to keep on increasing in the total supply out there, and I don't expect anything to change, especially in the short term here. Now, how do you profit off of this? The truth is you don't. A lot of these active duty cases are just way too expensive for you to see some pretty massive growth anywhere close to that 200% we saw for the Prisma 2. Prisma 2 was able to do that because it was so cheap. The Clutch case even saw some okay growth in the short term there, but that was extremely expensive compared to the Prisma 2, and all of the active duty cases right now are more expensive than the Clutch case. I don't think these active duty cases stand any competition in terms of trying to get a little bit of growth compared to a lot of the rare cases, which we know exactly what they're going to do in the near future. Now, talking about the Paris stickers and how to profit off of these, the opportunities are extremely large in this area. Now, you've commonly heard me talk bad about the glitters, and I want to make it very clear why I did that. If we want to look at Antwerp, we can see that the glitters significantly underperformed the hollows in this specific situation. That's because the hollows themselves were underpriced compared to the rest of the opportunities. But if we want to focus in, we can see that some specific glitters actually did better than the capsules and even some of the hollows in terms of growth. That's very important to realize because when we carry that over to Paris here, we want to figure out which ones are going to be that same profitability. We need to look at this right here and see which Paris stickers don't have actually any alternatives. And when we focus in on this, we start to see a very interesting trend, and that's the fact that we see a lot of these stickers that don't have alternatives keeping the prices that they increased when we saw them removed. We can see here that a lot of them, like the Apex or the Fnatic or the Monty, have actually kept up a decent amount of that growth they saw when we saw that initial spike. Compare that to some of them like the Liquid, the FaZe, and all these other teams that are repeating from different majors in the past, specifically Antwerp, and we can see that a lot of those ones have lost a decent amount of that growth they got in that quick spike. In fact, the only ones that actually look like they have some decent growth are the ones that were so cheap to begin with, like your Ents and your Vitality, things that no one wanted to begin with and they're not going to want anytime later. Now, making profit off of Paris is definitely not the easiest thing when we're talking about the stickers. In my opinion, I think you should really be avoiding these hollows. They're just way too expensive to make any actual real gain, and I think the risk on them is extremely large when it doesn't necessarily need to be. Now, focusing in on the glitters, I don't think all of them are going to be a good investment, but the ones that are a little bit cheaper and a little bit more interesting, we're looking for unique stickers here. Let's be completely honest, no one's going to be picking up the same sticker from major after major after major. We want to look for unique ones that maybe don't have an alternative or maybe got a new logo. I think these ones are going to be the most optimal if you're trying to look into a specific sticker, but remember, just because you're buying into these doesn't mean it's going to be a great investment. You need to consider the price as well. Now, one of the least known ways to profit is actually going to be selling, and potentially selling relatively soon. That's because if you think there's a major update on the horizon and prices are going to drop back down, you want to have funds on hand. But it's not just about that as well. You want to have funds on hand for whatever investment opportunity comes up. You don't know exactly what's going to happen, and the truth is, if you want to hold on to your investments, that's completely okay, but you should have some funds on hand at all times, especially if there's something that catches your eye. You don't have to immediately sell off whatever positions you're in, because they might be profitable, but they might also just be getting started. Like the Paris capsules, I wouldn't personally sell off my Paris capsules at this time for another investment, but if you had to, you might not be left with any other option. If we're talking about investments we want to look at things that are unboxable / consumable. We want to look at things that hopefully have a decreasing supply, and we want to look at things that are in demand. If we want to look at these specifically, there's one thing that meets this very clearly, and that's going to be the rare cases. We talked about rare cases, you know about rare cases, and I think this is probably the most obvious one out there. Major capsules are also following into this area. These ones are quite obvious, you probably know about them. However, there's some things that do definitely fall into most of these categories that could be a good option just because there's not a ton of people investing into them. I personally do set aside a little bit of money just to take on a little bit more of these risky investments. Investments I don't know for sure if they're going to work out, but they're also just cool items in general. We're talking specific stickers, we may be talking souvenir packages, not really for me because I don't really like them personally, but there's a ton of different options, like even operation passes. There's so many different options out there, and I highly suggest you find which one you like the most and put a little bit of your money into it, just because these ones might actually outperform the rest of your portfolio. Now, talking about a potential operation on the horizon is a very complicated topic because we know exactly what an operation does to the market in previous years. It absolutely ravages it. It destroys a lot of the growth we've seen, potentially months or even years to get to that point. With that being said, we also haven't seen an operation in over 2 years. The dynamics of the market are a little bit different, and it's hard to say if we're going to see that exact same deficit we saw in previous years. With that also being said, we also know an operation is definitely going to be taking away interest from everything you're probably invested into, whether that's rare cases, whether that's capsules, or whether that's stickers in general. Because of the way the brand new operations are formatted, it's almost guaranteed you're going to be able to buy a lot of these items directly, which means people are going to be selling off their investments even if they don't want to specifically buy a ton of these new investments, just to buy the brand new content that has been introduced into the game. In my personal opinion, I think it's definitely something that's going to impact your investments, but I don't know if it's necessarily going to be worth it to hold out. If we're talking long period, an operation maybe only sets you back 3 to 4 months in growth, and if you think it's going to be a longer period than that, it might not be worth it to actually wait until that operation comes to you, but rather invest now and see where that operation takes you. Now, the honest truth of profiting inside of CSGO off the future comes down to a basic fundamentals of a couple different things. 1, not making bad decisions. 2, investing into items that you have an actual reason to. And 3, staying consistent in what exactly you're doing. Don't be switching up your investments just of how you feel. Do it for an actual reason if it's required in that specific situation. That's all I got. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day.